Get underway very shortly, and just want to welcome you. Welcome to the month of September. You knew it was coming. Here it is. I'm Rodney. I'm hiding here at the back where it's just better for everyone if I do. This morning we have our lovely Heather Walton, who will be anchoring, and our good friend Curtis Kane on guitar. And finally, we get Stuart Smith. We've been hoping to have Stuart, and finally it will happen. So please give him a warm welcome, Stuart Smith. And I'll turn things over to Heather.
Good morning. This is Labor Day weekend, and I had to look it up to see what it meant. And it was formed in 1894, and
You just got crowded on
I have to crowd on the mic.
You just make yourself comfortable.
Okay. Up close and personal. Here we go. Labor Day. Does anyone know what it means? It means some of us have a day off, some of us don't. Because those who get the day off are often the ones who are a little bit higher up. Sometimes. It was always that way when I was in food service. So the boss was off at her cottage and we were there. But you know what? It was a blessing to serve anyways. And that is what life is about. Sometimes we have rest and sometimes we don't. Labor Day was formed in the labor union movement back in 1894. And it meant 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest. And I think now in our world, we don't see that balance anymore, do we? We find that we are scurrying around, working even when we get home, to catch up on so many things that we feel are important. And so let us take time to rest. Jesus said, "Come, all you who are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." We come together as a community to find that balance in our lives. And so for this hour, let us rest in the Spirit's presence as He moves among us in our hearts. And let us rest in the music and in the community that we are in. Oh, I'm not plugged in. Does it matter? It's a working man I am, and I've been down underground. And I swear to God, if I ever see the sun, or for any length of time, I can hold it in my mind. I never again will go down underground. At the age of 16 years, oh, he quarrels with his peers. Vowed they'd never see another one. In the dark recess of minds, where you age before your time, and the coal dust lies heavy on your lungs. It's a working man I am, and I've been down underground. And I swear to God, if I ever see the sun, or for any length of time, I can hold it dark recessive minds where you age before your time, and he'll tell you of the hardships that were had. Sing it if you know it. It's a working man I am, and I've been down underground, and I swear to God if I ever see the sun, or for any length of time, I can hold it in my mind. Never again will go down underground. Never again will go down underground. Let's all sing. Get together, I am blessed.
I am blessed, I am blessed, every day of my life I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning, when I lay my head to rest, I am blessed, I am blessed. Get together, get together, get together in the Lord. Let us all get together in the Lord. Let us greet one another like sisters and brothers. Let us all get together in the Lord. Please greet one another with a warm Trinity welcome. Oh yeah, there's a bunch. Sorry. Should have narrowed it down. Yeah, just a minute or so. We'll get back into okay. Oh. Oh, okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 1 God be with you. The one we'll use today.
That's right. It's kind of a cusp. It's a cusp.
Yes. All right. Do not be deceived. God's principles cannot be laughed away. For you reap whatever you sow. Galatians. You're sick.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise, all the
Any
earth.
luck with this tree?
I was going to ask first if we could bring up someone to light the candles. Would that be something we could do? Because they're not lit. And I would like to light the Christ candle and just allow the Spirit of God to be with us as He's always in our hearts. The Christ light always shines within us. Thank you. I have the...
We'll work on this.
The truth is I can't use the clicker. And I tried, and so...
Thank you, Sherry.
We thank those... Yes, please. We thank those who come alongside and hold up our arms. Where would we be if when we were born, someone did not pick us up in our arms and hold us? And that is what God does for us. Each and every day, and with each and every breath He gives us. So we welcome the Christ, the light of Christ, into this moment as we rest with Him. Make a joyful noise.
Isn't that great? See how we do here. What's our key limit? 1, 2, 3. Joyful noise of the earth. Worship your God with gladness. Make joyful noise of the earth. Come to this place with the song. Know that your God has made you. Know it's to God we belong. Come to this place with joyfulness and praise. Worship your God with a song. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Worship your God with gladness. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Come to this place with a song. Enter these gates with singing. Enter these courts with praise. To the God and bless the holy name. Worship your God with a song. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Worship your God with gladness. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Come to this place with the song. Angels celebrate the Savior. Seasons of endless years. Love our Lady ever shall endure. Worship your God with a song. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Worship your God with gladness. Make a joyful noise on the earth. Come to this place with a song. Thank you. Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, you are with us this morning. You are the spirit of our very being. Your presence moves among us. Your spirit leads us in so many ways. The Christ light of Jesus shines from within, and we have gathered to bless you as you have blessed us. You live and move within our hearts and in each atom of creation. You truly are the mystery of life, and we are amazed at your continued love that's poured out on us
Outside, we hear your birds chirping and the bees humming that ageless tune of life as spring moves into summer and summer moves into fall and sets out a symphony of sound beyond these walls. And here, for a quiet hour, we join your orchestra that beats in every creature, every delicate flower, every waterfall, every trickling stream, and every star above. We lift our hearts, Lord, our minds, our voices to you in praise and thanksgiving. Lead us into your throne room of grace and hold out the holy sepulchre of your love to us today as we share these moments and the stories of our lives as your presence moves among us. And we pray as Jesus taught us, our Mother and our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. It's time for our offering. You may be seated. It isn't? Oh, it's time for our community check-in. Sorry. I'm going to need a microphone. Will this one work? Hello.
There you go.
So, I'd like to know what's happening in the community here at Trinity. Waltrid can run around with this, okay? Oh. Are there any birthdays today or anniversaries? No. Are there any other blessings at all? Are we blessed? We are blessed by seeing these children here. A young man.
It feels like I haven't been here in months, probably because I haven't been with just a lot of things happening in the Moretti household. Last Saturday, Ernest, our oldest, who's come here occasionally and has helped out at a lot of our youth retreats, got married up in Toronto. And it was a wonderful service, and the dynamics were very good. Everyone behaved themselves, and just wonderful to see her married and started her life. So really capped a really wonderful summer for us, and it's also very nice to be back here among my Trinity family.
It is so good to be back here among my Trinity family too. I've got this cane that undoes. It's my mother's, and I think every time I trip on it, she's minding me like, pay attention to what you're doing.
So I'm very happy and pleased to say that last night we had a charity for Oldies Village. So we raised $1,300. It was a very small group. It was surprising that we even raised that much. We had awesome entertainers headed by Lita Von Slees of the community and other nice drag ladies who were there, but also singers in the community who all got together, and we were very good and raised that much money, and we're very, very happy to do so for the community that lost so much, that so many people out of their homes and unable to get back in. So that should help them further to be able to get up on their feet again, and we're believing that we want to do this again in the future should they need more. So.
Thank you. Look at the kindness today. Today we are speaking of kindness. I forgot to introduce our guest who is here, Stuart Smith. And this is the third time we've tried to get him here. And through a course of events, this is 3 times, and he's here. So we welcome him. He is an esteemed speaker and psychologist and teacher. And so we will hear from him later. But he is going to be speaking on kindness. And what a beautiful subject to speak. We have all had kindness done to us, and we have all passed it on. Anything else that is going on? Any prayer requests? I know we can be mindful for those who...
Hi, our great niece is 6 months old. She's in the hospital. She had to have open heart surgery. She's got a closed valves that were from birth defects. She's doing very well today. They actually got her, the first day since Monday, they were able to hold her since the surgery because she's got a virus now, ever since they've had to open her up. So, and her lungs have collapsed, and now she's able to breathe through one of her lungs. So we're just asking for some prayers for her. She's only 6 months and she's fighting.
What is your niece's name? Area. So be mindful of Area today as we go about our day. Have you got something to tell us too? Okay. Can you come here? Because my feet don't work as well to leap over pews anymore. Okay.
Everybody united my family.
What is that?
Everybody united my family.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's beautiful. It's happy birthday, right? Is that it? Oh, what a blessing she is. I love the young ones. Yes. Oh, okay. I'm going to. Yeah. So if there's any other, no other announcements, we'll just remember those in prayer. I thank Eric for just being the one behind the scenes that always makes things go so smoothly and reminds me not to shake the tambourine into the microphone. We learn by falling flat on our face, and then we're still moving forward, aren't we? Yes. Do you have something to say? Yes. Wow. She's showing us her bubbles.
Okay.
Oh. You start school? Wow, we will talk about that soon in our children's time, okay?
All right, fall is upon us, and I have 2 announcements, exciting announcements. The first one is the fact that we are going, in the first week of October, we're going to go and do a new pictorial directory. Some of you may not be familiar what that is, but basically you have your picture taken, you give us your information, there's a beautiful directory that goes home with you. You're trying to find Waltred, you can't find her on the internet, but you just look in there and you've got my telephone number and everything else. Last one we did was 11 years ago, so I know I'm going to look just as fantastic as I did then. Just 2 big quick things. This is totally free. It's free of charge. And also you get a picture to take back with you that you've chosen from that. So, the reason I'm mentioning it right now is because in the back of the sanctuary I have a sheet. I need some help. And what I'm looking for is 1 or 2 people each of the Sundays in September after service, if they can give half an hour to go and help people sign up for their appointment. Because of course you can't just all come and we can hope for the best. right? So if you want to come at 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, we'll put you down and we won't give that slot to anybody else. So again, please sign up. We just need a couple of people each of the Sundays, but we don't need the same people. So give me one Sunday. Life is good. The other thing is very exciting, but also kind of bittersweet. This church has made, the women of the church here have made numerous beautiful quilts. They are no longer going to be making quilts. We have one gorgeous quilt which was made by Myrna and Carol and Helen Irwin. I don't see her today. And some of you know, of course, Peggy Moffat. We will be having tickets soon to sell. They are only $10. It's a raffle, only $10 for the ticket, or 3 for $25. But not only do we want you to buy your own personal chance at winning this beautiful thing, we want you to think about your friends, your family, your co-workers, your groups, and you're going to tell me or Nancy how many tickets you want to take, because you're going to sell them to those people as well. We only have 250 for $10, a quilt which is worth more than $600. So tickets will be ready. I've already put on some beautiful pictures so you can see what they look like. Start thinking about who you are already selling those tickets to. I've already sold my first 4 because I was down in Toronto, and why not hit up Toronto? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. That can just go in that and stand over here. Thank you, love.
Now it's time for our offering. So the ushers could come forward. Do we have ushers this morning, or shall we have a few people just... Thank you. While the world looks upon me as I struggle along, and they say I have nothing, but they are so wrong. In my heart I'm rejoicing, how I wish they could see. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. There's a roof up above me, I've a good place to sleep. There's food on my table and shoes on my feet. You gave me your love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. I know I'm not wealthy, and these clothes, they're not new. I don't have much money, but Lord, I have you, and that's all that matters, though the world may not see. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. There's a roof up above me, I've a good place to sleep. There's food on my table and shoes on my feet. You gave me your love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. What can I do? I'll ask you to stand.
Okay, great. Sure. What can I do? What can I bring? What can I bring? What can I say a prayer. I'll bring my love. I'll do my share. One more. What can I do? What can I pray? What can I say? What can I say? I'll say with joy. I'll say a prayer. I'll bring my love. I'll do my share.
And all of God's people said, Amen. It's time for the children to come and hear a little story. So I would ask them to come, but first I have to go and get something. What did I do with it? Oh, it's over here. I'm looking for a special prop I have today. I think I can manage. Here I come. Excuse me. Excuse me. Here I come. I won't come over. Hi. I love your beautiful smiles. I want to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story. Hi. I have some sore legs. And because I have sore legs, you've probably seen my cane that I walk around with. And you know what? About 6 months ago, my doctor said to me, you have to get something that helps you balance better. Let me show you how I walk without this, okay? Hopefully I won't fall over you. Okay? Watch how I walk without this. Because my foot is numb, and I have something called arthritis. So I kind of walk like Pinocchio. And I have learned to dance with it. And actually I was last night at the Victory Legion dancing with our young man. Curtis was playing in his band with Kathy and Dale. And so I hold my cane and bop along. But you know, I had trouble accepting this because I have run like all of you, and I have stood up on these things, and I have jumped just like you do. And you know, I can't do that anymore. And so I found on Friday, I was visiting with a friend, and I went to visit her new cat. And I learned about kindness that day because I was speaking to my friend and I was petting her beautiful new cat, who is named Jewel. And I was glad to see Jewel. Oh, careful, careful. And while I was sitting there, I was telling my friend that I needed a walker. Okay. I was needing a walker, and I was having difficulty affording one. And so I had gone to a motion place and looked for a walker. She looked at me, and she was from England, so she's very proper, and she sits like the queen, and we were like having tea, you know. And she says, look in that storeroom there. And I just like this. She's like my grandma. She's in her 80s. And I said, what? And she said, go look there. You need a walker? And I walked over and I opened the door, and this walker was sitting in there. Her husband had just died 2 months ago, and she was very sad, so she had gotten this cat. So sitting with her, I thought I was blessing her. No, she was blessing me with kindness because she gave me this walker. I went in with my hands open, and I came out with the exact walker that I had been looking at in the store. That is God moving through our lives. That is love moving through our lives and helping us when we need a hand. So maybe one day this week when you go to school, because I hear some are going to school, who's going to school? I'm at school too. Yay, we're going to school. Well, maybe when you're sitting having your snack, if you see that someone else doesn't have a cookie or doesn't have a piece of orange, would you share yours? Because that's a kind thing to do. It's fun to share. It helps us feel good in our hearts, doesn't it? And it's fun when people are kind to us. Okay, we're going to sing a song. Oh yes, and this one has actions, so we're going to ask everybody who is a child at heart to sing the actions with us. I'm going to beetle up this way and come up here, but I'll give you directions. The hallelujah part, everybody stands up here. Can I have a helper? And over here you'll be praise ye the Lord, okay? So every praise ye the Lord, this young group stands up, and every hallelujah, we stand up. And then at the end, we all stand up and praise the Lord. Okay? Are we ready?
Give her a key.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Praise ye the Lord. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Praise ye the Lord. Praise ye the Lord. Hallelujah. Praise ye the Lord. Hallelujah. Praise ye the Lord. Hallelujah. Praise ye the Lord. Lord, I ask that you be with these children and you would bless them as they are going to their class. Amen. Excuse me, I got. You guys are going downstairs now. I'll take care of your slide. Scripture reading.
Heather will be right with you. She's just in kind of gridlock right
I want to
now.
go with the children. Sorry, Stuart. I should have had you ask.
Heather, how are you doing? We missed you.
Isn't that a blessing? Give them a hand as they go out. Oh my God. They are the ones on whose shoulders, our shoulders, they stand on. What a blessing they are. I have the scripture verse, but it's not here.
You
I have it in
make
my
stuff
book.
up. You find it whenever you're ready.
My husband says, have a book and always have it and flip it, but it's the flipping that I forget. So just leave it. Today we're learning about Jesus at a Pharisee's house, and then we will be learning about Paul. We wrote to the Hebrews about this. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, to take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, don't invite just your friends or your brothers or your sisters or relatives or even your rich neighbors. No, because if you do, they might invite you back and you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection. Jesus doesn't change. Stay on good terms with each other, held together by love. Be ready with a meal or a bed when it's needed. Why, some have extended hospitality to angels without even knowing it. Regard prisoners as if they were in prison, you were in prison with them. And look on the victims of abuse as if what happened to them has happened to you. Honor your relationships and remain true to one another. Don't be obsessed with getting more things. Be relaxed with what you have, since God has assured us, I'll never let you down. I'll never walk off and leave you. We can boldly quote, God is there and ready to help. I'm fearless no matter what. Who or what can get to me? Appreciate your leaders who give you wisdom and good news. Take a good look at the way they live and let their faithfulness instruct you, as well as their truthfulness. There should be a consistency that runs through us all. For Jesus doesn't change yesterday, today, or tomorrow. He's always totally himself. May we find wisdom in these ancient words. And I'd like to introduce Stuart. Oh, we get to sing first. I'm sorry. And then introduce.
Yeah, I can't blame her. Here we go. You good at this? You don't feel put upon? Okay. 1, 2.
When we can't find the time to spend being lovers and best of friends, when we can't seem to make it work, when we can't find the words love will, love will, love will, love will. There'll be times that we disagree about the way things are supposed to be. When we can't find a common ground, when we can't work it out, love will, love will, love will, love will. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, earthly possessions, they turn to rust. When the world won't recall our name, one thing will remain, love will, 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 love will.
Thank you. I've never heard that before. It is beautiful. And now I will introduce Stuart to come and speak to us about kindness and the connections we have.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. It was very, very kind of you in the first place. The first time I was invited, I wound up in Emerge that Sunday. So obviously on the mend, but I just wanted to talk to you about the passage that's assigned. Most of the Christian church reads that text this morning. Thinking about mutual love or connected kindness, and how Jesus really is asking us to grow in kindness every day and to show it. It got me thinking about a story that's a true story. Most of my life I've worked as a social worker, in social services, and one of my part-time jobs in Toronto was in subsidized housing. I was there part-time. And the only thing the tenants all had in common is that they were poor. They're financially challenged. These were folks who knew where the food banks were, who knew where the community meals and church basements were, because food security was a very real issue for them. Well, one Friday, one of the tenants came down to my office, and she had a big toothy smile, and she had a check, and she put it in front of herself, and she snapped it and kept saying, guess what this is? And one of her elderly relatives from a distance had written her and said, I know that things are tough. We're praying for you. Here's something to help you. And what are you going to do with it? She says to me, I'm not going to say it, you'll find out. And she went away. And a couple hours later, she came back with bags of stuff. She went to the thrift shop and bought herself some clothes. She had a lot of groceries. She was very, very happy. Again, the big toothy smile. And isn't that great? And I wanted to affirm, that's a good choice. That's a good choice. People get extra money. Sometimes we blow it on funny things. She said, I've still got some left. What are you going to do with it? You'll find out, was the answer. So a few hours later, it was a Friday, and I usually work till about 6 on Fridays. It was a day much like yesterday was. Mid-20s, cool, sunny, beautiful. And around 4 o'clock, most of the tenants start to come back from work, from school, from appointments. And around 4:30, she landed there with a bag of Kentucky Fried Chicken, a big bucket of it, and fries and some pop that she'd bought. We went to the community kitchen. At her request, she went out to the front, and there was a couple of picnic tables there, a retaining wall, and she sat down, and anybody who came, she invited them to have the meal. So within about an hour, not all of us ate the chicken and fries, most of us had the pop, but within an hour there's about 20, 25 of us outside in the sunny day, laughing and having a good time and teasing each other and eating chicken. And later I asked her, I said, I was a great kind. What did you do that for? She said, I know those folks. They're my people, and they don't have treats in their lives. And I thought, boy, what a great, kind connection she had with her community. Now, I want to tell you one other thing about her, is that life had not treated her kindly. As a girl, as a young woman, she had known pretty much all the kinds of violence and abuse that people can know. And that's a tough thing to be a survivor. Some people survive by being tough themselves. In her case, she shared with me, and I think it's a great insight, is I don't want to be like the people who hurt me. I want to do better. And I think that's something that Jesus is asking all of us, is to not be like the unkind people we know. Not to grow in unkindness, but rather to grow in kindness. So today, just going to do some quick reflection on the scriptures we read. How can we increase in that connected kindness? What is it that it does inside us when it really gets a hold of us? And then the big question is, why should we do this? I'm at the stage of my life that I don't really see you clearly, and I don't see my notes clearly, so I'm going to put these on. So the first thing is how. How can we be more kind? How can we continue to grow in kindness? And I think the first thing I would just suggest to you is that it's the essence of the gospel, to remember that it's the essence of the gospel. And think about the times when people say, what's your faith all about? And for some, it's very complex. It's like, you have to understand systematic theology, or you have to have an approved spiritual practice, or there's a moral code to live. But when Jesus was asked that question, he said it's love. Love God and love others. That's something every one of us, including the ones that took off earlier, can do. We all have that great capacity to lovingly connect with each other. Well, that's the one thing. It's not a suggestion. It's a commandment. So that's our marching orders. But in the passages we read, one of the things that's very helpful is that Hebrews text. Several times the writer says, remember. Remember the people in prison as though you were in prison. Remember the people who are being harmed as though you were being harmed. There's an invitation to empathy here, to really understand and get into the experience of other people. And trying to think about this, and also the fact that it was Labor Day, I got thinking about Tommy Douglas again. People who know that name know that he's credited really for the medical coverage we have as Canadians. He's the guy that came up with that idea, and certainly had other people around him, but here's how he came up with it. Maybe you know this story. You can Google it. Don't Google it now. That's rude. That's rude. But Google it later. He tells it with great gusto. I've heard some of his speeches on YouTube. When he was a kid, he hurt his leg, and he was from a poor family that immigrated from Scotland to Western Canada. And those were the days where you paid to see your doctor. His leg got worse and worse as he got older. When he was 12, his family doctor told his parents that there's an expensive operation we could give him, or I can do it on the cheap and I can cut off his leg. And so his parents, who couldn't raise the money, had to tell Tommy Douglas, the 12-year-old boy, that soon we're going to have your leg amputated. And so, needless to say, he didn't sleep well. He got into a funk. He was quite sad for quite a while. And fortunately, some surgeon somewhere in that neighborhood heard his plight and did it for free. Now, Tommy Douglas, as a young man, felt called to ministry. He was training to be a Baptist minister, had both of his legs because of the surgery. But he got caught up with an idea, back then called the social gospel, that there was something about the justice and love of God that demanded more of us in terms of community. And he went into politics, and sort of the rest is history. He became a premier, he became a staunch advocate. And if you go on Google, you'll hear his speeches, which I do a poor imitation of, but in his speeches, when he talks about the rationale of everyone being covered, he said, no 12-year-old child in Canada should ever have to worry that their leg's going to be amputated because their family can't afford the operation. Every Canadian kid should have that covered. And that was the remembering that he did. He remembered the poor folks that also lived in his neighborhood. He remembered his roots. He also remembered the people that helped him get where he was that day. We would do well to always be thankful for those folks that have shown us kindness, that have somehow helped us in a similar way, perhaps not as dramatically. But the Hebrews passage says, remember. Remember not only those that struggle in big ways, but maybe those also who are faith leaders in your community. Remember them. Have empathy. So thinking about that, being mindful of people's struggles, which, if we had a special x-ray machine, and we could go from pew to pew to pew, we would find struggles from the past struggles that are presently going on, and struggles, perhaps, if we could predict this in the future, all of us are going to go through it, or are going through it, or have gone through it. It's the kindness of others that helps us, and we can be that. We can be that kindness. So be mindful, be mindful. That's the how. The what part, what does that do? What does it do when kindness starts to bubble up and percolate and flow through us? Well, it calls us to action. Long ago, I heard somebody say, you can do things without caring, but you can't care and not do. People who care about people show it in some tangible way. And again, in Labor Day, thinking about that, thinking about the Catholic workers' movement. Dorothy Day, don't mix her up with Doris Day. You'll be singing Que Sera Sera. Dorothy Day was a radical, a late convert to the Christian faith in the 21st century, and she did the same thing. Her and another co-founder of the movement thought there's a radical claim here in the gospel around looking after everybody. And in its heyday, it's still around. Catholic Workers Association is still around in states, in Canada, and the UK. Workers formed unions together. Workers formed associations together in the name of the gospel. And so we're going to help our neighbors. It was before the days of disability insurance and unemployment insurance. And so there was a passion there to say, we love God enough to love others, and so we act. Now, I just want to tuck in something that Dorothy Day, that's really big. That's a really big project. But many of us won't go down in history for doing those sort of things. What we will be remembered for is the smaller acts of kindness. The things that we can do right today, right at the end of the service, with our families, with our friends, with the people we go back to school or the workers we work with, our church community. In some small way, I don't want to make much of it, but I do want to give you credit. That first Sunday when I got up and I was in a bad way and I had to go to the hospital instead of coming here, I just felt like a really awful. It takes ordained ministers years to tick off 2 congregations, and I'm doing it in just like an hour, right? So I contacted the leaders of both churches, and they said, no problem, we'll cover. And then these strangers who I've never met, I got a couple of, 5, I think, telephone messages and several emails within that week. Everything went fine. We were fine. I just want to check in to see if you're okay. That kind of kindness that's already present among you, that's the stuff of life, isn't it? That's the stuff that warms us and makes us feel like we're part of something. And all of us can do that as well, whether it's an email or a pat on the shoulder or saying hello or getting together with coffee. We can show that kind of kindness. That's the what part. The how part is remembering, empathizing. The what part is doing something. Let's do something great together. The last one has to do with why. And I think this is the best. This is the best part for me. It's just the essence of the gospel. The why part is that human beings have such great and wondrous love from God. They really have great dignity and worth because of how God views them. We don't always get that. We don't always act that way, but it doesn't take it away. My partner Kim and I were in Kitchener last Wednesday, and we walked by St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Kitchener, and there was a life-size statue, maybe this high, of a beggar in a robe, sitting with one hand out. And as I walked closer to it, you saw that the one hand had a nail mark. And underneath the statue, it said, I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. And it carried on with that Matthew passage. And then, as much as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. The Hebrew writer uses a similar metaphor. Entertain everybody, show hospitality. Sometimes you're even entertaining angels. I don't know what you think about that. Well, sometimes when our kids act a certain way, we say they're no angels. But there's something, I think, at the very least, it's a good metaphor. It might be even that there are angels that walk among us, but it's a great metaphor. It's the same metaphor that Jesus used. When you do it to the least of these, to the enemy, to the one that really irritates you, to the person on the board committee that you've always been at odds with, when you do it to the least of these, you do it to me. We get glimpses of that in our human struggles, in human rights or in ecumenical talks, interfaith talks, where there's like a veil pushed aside, and we suddenly say, we're all worth something. We're all worthy. But here Jesus just says it flat out. All people are God's people. All of us are made in the image of the Creator. And with that in mind, that reminds us why we should be kind. So this passage that we're looking at here, that kindness is shown in such practical ways. Jesus, in the gospel reading, says to the guy who invited him to the luncheon, listen, next time you throw a lunch, next time you throw a supper, invite those that are on the margin. Don't invite relatives or rich neighbors that can pay you back and you're outdoing each other with desserts. Invite people who really need help. Do it in a way that protects them, that shows them dignity. Do it in a way that shows kindness. And that's really the essence of the gospel. God so loved us that he gave. His love is in us. We give. It's the powerful message of this particular text. Compassion shows practical help. And we can all do that. We need to remember, we need to hone our skills around empathy. We need to act, and we need to keep at the center of all things that people have tremendous worth to God. And that's good enough for me. We need to agree with God on that and show them the same. So whether it's great monumental things like Tommy Douglas did or Dorothy Day, or whether it's small things like a smile or a handshake or making it right with somebody in our family, or buying a bucket of chicken. May God help us to continue to grow in divine kindness and to show it to all the world. Amen.
So we come to our time of prayer, and let us just quiet our hearts. God has taught us today. The Spirit has been with us today. The children's joy has been with us today. And God moves in our sorrow too. So let us just pray as we sing, Spirit, be our breath.
Hallelujah.
as we just take a moment right now and be still. Let us think of those who lost their homes in Woodward Ave. Think of those who held out their hands and took time to offer what they had in kindness. Let us remember those who are in hospital and sick and can't be with us today. And we ask that you would be with that little tiny niece who now fights for her life. You are her breath, Lord. And we just ask that you would be with her and with the families and guide the doctors. And we ask that you would be with us when we don't feel very worthy, but we are. You have made us in your image. Gracious God. And you have put love and eternity in our hearts. And so we can raise our heads. You are the glory and the lifter of our heads. How amazing you are, that mystery. Spirit, help us claim your power. Hallelujah. Spirit, help us claim your power. Hallelujah. Spirit, help us live your love. Hallelujah. Spirit, help us live your love. Hallelujah. I would ask that we would just, our time has gone. And would you like to sing Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, or would, yes? Okay. Let us stand then and sing Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. I don't know if I have it. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all harms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Okay. And so I will stand here. I've lost my mic again. So, kindness echoes back. And it's God's kindness to us, poured out on us, that we can share and offer to others. The good news that God is love and God loves us. And God is. So go and smile and enjoy your week, having rested in the everlasting arms once again. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great summer. We look forward to getting started on regular scheduled services next week, and Paul and Kathy will be back. Thank you so much for being with us this summer. Please, a nice warm round for Stuart and Heather, and our good friend Eric, who's always there for us. On behalf of Curtis and myself, we'd like to thank you so much and have a great rest of the summer. There's still a little bit left. Get out and enjoy it. Take care. A working song from Boat.
Left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day, and I never lost one minute of sleep and worried about the way things might have been. Well, big wheels keep on turning, out there we keep on burning, 'cause baby we're rolling, rolling, rolling on a river, rolling, rolling, rolling on a river. Hey, hey. Well, I cleaned a lot of places down in Memphis, pumped a lot of pain down in New Orleans, and I never saw that good side of the city till I hitched a ride on that riverboat queen. Well, big wheels keep on turning, proud baby keeps on burning, 'cause baby we're rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. That's it, rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Now, if you come down to the river, bet you're gonna find some people who live. You don't have to worry about you got no money. People on the river are happy to give. Big wheels keep on turning, proud baby keep on burning. Baby we're rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. One more time for the dancers. Here we go. Rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Hey, hey, hey.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and we'll see you soon.